Good morning. This is Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by United legend Paul Parker to talk over the FA Cup final between Manchester United and Manchester City at the weekend. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to get your comments and questions in. If you're watching the replay, say hello and comment. We still reply to the comments we get on the replays. If you're listening back on the audio podcast as well, be sure to subscribe and leave a review on the platform you're listening on. Right, so FA Cup final, Paul. Manchester City 2, Manchester United 1. 2 goals from Ilkay Gundogan early in each half. Both edge of the box screamers or shots that the defence or goalkeeper could have done better with. Before we actually get into the game, we'll talk about the team setup itself. A lot of people talk about how we were going to deal with that beforehand. There were a few key areas that people weren't sure on, whether or not Shaw would play in the middle. If Dalot or Malacia would play on the left, if Fred would start in the middle, whether Garnacho would start, all of these things really. And yeah, all right, in hindsight, it's easy to turn around and say, all right, well, we lost the game, so that means they made the wrong call. But I like to think we're a little bit more even-handed than that. How do you think he set up on Saturday? Do you think that he did the fair thing, or do you think that there's a couple of things that you would have changed in there?
I think the only one, and it's not in hindsight, but I think it's a fact, and I think the majority of supporters would have thought anyway, Garnacho should have started before Sancho. I think that's the only way that's the only one I would say.
Yeah.
I can understand Fred playing in a way to have more energy and legs in there because of the way City shift the ball around, but there'd be other negatives to why maybe Fred was playing as well. So I think Garnacho's the one that sticks out like a sore thumb, and his performance when he come on, the difference he made
Yeah.
as an attacking threat. He to be honest, he ended up as one of United's best players, to be perfectly honest, because he come on and he was a threat. He played with his heart, and he played with a desire to try and win a game of football. And Kyle Walker suddenly had to work harder and think harder about what he was going to do. Everyone talks about how quick Kyle Walker is, but if you play up against him with a bit of brains, as what Garnacho did, he didn't bother trying to think, "Oh, I'm not going to win that race." He just played with his head, and so that was great. I mean, that was a good call to get him on, but as we know, and I use that word hindsight again, it was too late. Maybe 90 minutes too late, to be perfectly honest, of going that way. I look at the rest of it, and I don't think he could have done anything else. I thought Lindelof done really well against Haaland.
Yeah.
I thought initially he tried to be physical. I don't think you can fight fire with fire. I think you have to play against Haaland. You have to play with a little bit of guile because you know that you ain't going to fight him. He reminds me of a modern day Sparky in the sense of he's willing to take a whack. You saw if any other centre forward had taken the whacks he'd have got, he would have spent 50 minutes on the floor. But he stood up, he stood his ground, and everyone could have a go at him. And he wanted to say, "I'm stronger than you." And the referee saw that as well, and the referee was willing to let that go. Otherwise, it would have been ridiculous. The game would have kept stopping. But I thought Lindelof done really, really well against him. A few times got caught ball watching, and he runs in behind. Lucky enough, the ball never got through. But Haaland is only going to become a better player as he goes on. He'll be even better next season with another pre-season behind him. But looking at the back four, did okay. I thought if we look at the first half, Wan-Bissaka was the best player in the sense of he was doing his job and he was trying to get forward. He got the penalty. Some say it wasn't. Some say it is. I would say it is in the modern game. I would have been disappointed if it had gone against United because I'm still in that belief of deliberate handball. There's not much else you can do when you jump. Your arms are going to go up. But I look at the rest of it. Wan-Bissaka done well overall. I think he's been let down badly by a fellow pro who cheated, in Jack Grealish. Disgusting what he done. But other than that, really, you look in midfield. Ericsson was he had his poorest game. really struggled. Casemiro, there was good bits. I think his tackle is debatable. Another one. Fernandez wasn't in it enough when you needed someone like him. You needed your big player, your best attacking threat in the game more. Can you get more out of Casemiro if he had someone with legs around him and someone who would actually play more as a team player rather than as an individual in that midfield with him? And when we talk about a front three, I don't think it's worth talking about because they just wasn't there. It was embarrassing. Front three was absolutely embarrassing, Wayne.
So, first of all, about the Fernandez thing, because Fernandez was moved right. Obviously, the idea was to put Fred on De Bruyne and hope that he would do it. But De Bruyne, from what I saw of it, and I haven't watched the game back, but from what I saw of it, De Bruyne just dropped a little bit deeper, and he was running everywhere. He enjoyed the freedom that he gave himself, like great players do.
Yeah.
Fred wasn't really following him. Fernandez meant that meant that Fernandez played on the right, and it works at Old Trafford in big games, but I don't think it's going to work in a cup. Well, it didn't, and again, this is with hindsight. That it's a big pitch. You kind of need him in the key areas where you're going to affect. The player that you need playing wide right in a game like that is someone who's going to work hard and track the line. And I'm not saying Fernandez doesn't have those qualities, but United in that kind of environment, especially because you've got Eriksen, who was always going to tire, and you hope that he has a bigger impact than what he does. If you don't have Fernandez in there, you don't have those interconnecting relationships, and you're really leaving Casemiro and Eriksen to struggle. I mean, I understood the selection. Don't get me wrong, and if I was picking the team, and I think when I was doing previews before the game, I was saying Fernandez outright, and I am saying now it is with the benefit of hindsight, looking at it.
Yeah, just quickly, Wayne. Just what it was said to me before the game. Someone said to me, "There's a chance that Fred's going to play," and I said, the only way that's going to work then if Fernandez goes to the right. The problem is every time Fernandez goes to the right and he doesn't get a lot of the ball, he starts getting frustrated. He starts waving his arms about. And when he does get the ball, he gets erratic because he feels he's got to do something because he's hardly touched it.
Yeah.
So in a way, you're looking at a positive for the team, but then all of a sudden it becomes a negative for the team because you're losing a player, you're losing his work ethic, you're losing his ability on the ball, and then you've got a player on your team who is playing and he's emotional because he wants the ball all the time as much as possible, and he's not being fed. So straight away, he becomes an individual rather than a team player.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work, and I just think, and I'm a bit disappointed sometimes with Ten Hag because I look at the club where he's come from, and that club has lived and breathed young players and produced so many great young Dutch players, or young players who have gone there from other countries and become playing in European competitions at 17 and 18.
Yeah.
Why hasn't he given Garnacho that run, that start? I mean, he's pulled Fred out of the wilderness to start an FA Cup final, which everyone, you kind of go, really? Let me know. And then you've got someone there who's hungry. You took him away from representing his country in a big competition, and you haven't given him a go. Now he's gone and straight away answered all the questions, which everyone said he's coming to a big game against maybe the best side in Europe, and he's delivered for a good few minutes. So what's it going to take for him to get that opportunity? Why did he start before? Sancho's form did not deserve to start an FA Cup final.
Yeah.
It was, everyone's talking, Martial's missing. Martial did not deserve to start an FA Cup final. If anything, the better way might have been to start Weghorst through the middle.
Yeah.
It might have been, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating for Begos. I don't think you are either, where we're saying the situation was that bad. The United's hands were that tied that might have been the best option considering the players that we had available. And I look at that, Paul, and it is an interesting point. The flip side with the Garnacho thing was, and the reason why I understood that was that he's a game changer from the bench, and United had nothing else from the bench that could potentially change the game up. And obviously, when he came on, he did do that. But the argument which you make, which is much more sensible, and everyone else was saying it when I was talking to them before the match about it. You start your best player in a cup final, or your best players. You don't go for the game-changing thing. You hope that they make the difference, and then you change the game to make it tighter. And yeah, we've obviously, I'm talking with hindsight. A lot of people were saying that before the game that Garnacho should start. And yeah, it's clear to see that we would have probably had a little bit more joy. Let's talk about the game itself then. I mean, look, it was all a bit flat from that first minute, really. A well-worked goal. United didn't even lay a glove on them. You've seen history there, 12 or 13 seconds it took for them to score. And a great strike. A lot of complaints about De Gea or the defence not getting there. And it was a training ground goal. Disappointing to concede all around. And really, that made it a bit of a flat affair, really. I mean, we had a good period in the first half towards the end after getting the penalty, that stroke of luck, because we never looked, even in that time after the goal, it never looked like we had a spell where we would get on top of the game. And, United's issue was always going to be this, that on the big pitch and the weather being so warm, those elements combine perfectly for City's approach of keeping the ball, wearing you down. You've really got to be clinical and cold and economic with the choices that you're making on the ball in United. And this is a quality. I'm not saying that this is a detriment. A quality of United is that they've got a lot of emotional players, like you've just said, Paul. But in a big game like that, you need ice in the veins. You need players making the right decisions. They need to be patient off the ball, and they need to be making the right decisions in the few moments when they get it on a game like that. And we didn't have that. And I'm not saying that you resign yourself to just losing the game of football. I think United kept it tight. It didn't make it a good spectacle. I thought it was a poor cup final. I don't think it's particularly good football from City as well, but it's effective. Don't get me wrong. It wins games, it wins trophies, it wins titles. They've got the best players. They exploit the spaces, and they do that. I don't want to say that we were resigned to what we saw. There were probably things that we could have done. We've already talked about the personnel. I don't really know in terms of match. Once you've got those players on the pitch, in terms of match approach, I don't really see what else United could have done. I mean, were the goals avoidable? A lot of people very critical of De Gea for the second one as well. There's a goalkeeper analysis that said like 98% of the time, or not. So it was a very high number, something between like 80 and 90 times out of 100. A goalkeeper saves that shot, and I'm not so sure that that's true. But those are the stats apparently. And there was some there were a couple of goals that De Gea's conceded this season that 98% of goalkeepers wouldn't have let in, and there's been a couple of errors, but I think that's absolutely that's a very high number. 98 times out of 100 that goals like that wouldn't go in. You see goals going all the time for different things, but De Gea seems to be the one who always gets called out for it. Don't get me wrong, he could have done better. When I'm watching that game in real time, I'm not thinking, "Oh God, De Gea's let us down there." I think there's root cause for the first goal in particular. I'm not looking at the goalkeeper thinking what he's a bit closer to him. He's not dead in the corner, but there's so many problems that caused that first goal before he gets to De Gea. What did you make of the pattern of the game overall, starting with conceding the first goal? Because obviously, once they'd done that, City just had they could play the game and they didn't have to break a sweat, and which same thing in the weather.
Yeah, but I look at it, and the first goal, all about saying, initially saying, what a great goal. Why does everyone want to look at the goalkeeper? Why want to take it away? Because it was a great goal. Don't suddenly just give a goal as a goal of a season and then say, oh yeah, but the goalkeeper was rubbish though.
Yeah,
it was someone strikes it that well and that early. Remember how early that ball was hit when it come to him, and it caught a goalkeeper out, and he just hit it, and it's gone up and it's come down, and sometimes you just can't do anything about it. certain people have got to go and stand or be in that situation, stand in the middle of goal and just think, let someone shoot from someone and say, can you position yourself that you can actually save every single one? And the answer to it is no, you can't. You forget about the save he made from Haaland, which would have killed the game.
Yeah.
People keep forgetting that. Let's talk about the situation, how it gets there when the ball bounces. Lindelof goes in with a header with De Bruyne. Then the ball actually gets then to Gundogan. Who can you blame for that? It's easy to come out and keep naming outfield players, but they don't actually live with it for long. Goalkeepers live with it for so long, as David De Gea has. You're reading so many things, people saying, "Oh, get him out of my club," like he's been a disgrace for how many years? 13 years, is it? He's been at the club. 12? I don't know. No,
2011,
12 years. And you think to yourself, has he been that bad all the way through? And you kind of go, well, no, he hasn't. And we are still allowed, given what's gone on in the world in the last few years, we are allowed to actually, look at history and go back a bit and just remember what he done for Manchester United during a very lean time. And again, I say he won Players Player of the Year 3 times, or Player of the Year 3 times in a bounce for a goalkeeper. That tells you the crisis that Manchester United were in. And he's still doing a good job now. So a lot of them have got to remember this moment, and then maybe after he departs, 2-3 years on, and then they might really see how good he really is, because they most probably will get what they want, a goalkeeper who can pass the ball like Franz Beckenbauer, or to the modern day person, I'm going to come out and say a Varane to a point, a Martinez can pass it like them. We can do all that. The issue will be, can they actually, after not doing anything for 10, 15 minutes, make a match-winning save, or a save that keeps Manchester United in a game, or call it a save that wins a game? Is the goalkeeper going to be able to do that? Because that's how you judge your best goalkeepers. Everyone's raving about Man City's got Ortega. Everyone's going, oh, he was great. Look at his feet. And you look at him and you think to yourself, well, he never got tested by United at all. How good a goalkeeper is he really? Is he? That's the bit we don't know. So that's the mad thing now. Everyone's judging goalkeepers by how good they can pass the ball. Oh, he kept kicking the ball out. Yeah, he kicked the ball out. He made a mistake, as players do more often than goalkeepers. So that bit with De Gea it still grates me how people keep wanting to pull him down, when yet those same people will be there trying to praise him when he actually leaves the club, and they remember everything he's done.
Yeah.
History's for a reason.
I remember when we signed Bartes, and he was like, the idea with Bartes was, oh, he's a modern goalkeeper, he's better with his feet. And that was good for like a year, but then the problem that you get with a goalkeeper that's good with his feet, or that he passes more than that he plays the role of a conventional goalkeeper, is that because they're passing more often, because they're involved in the build-up from the back more often, they've still got an high propensity to make a mistake when they pass the ball. And we saw that many times with Bartes. He made a couple of very high-profile errors, which cost us games out, and that's why he was kicked out. Or not kicked out, jettisoned. Why he was replaced in the end, and then we eventually went with Van der Sar when we went through Carroll and Howard to get to Van der Sar. None of those three were as good as Bartes with the ball at his feet, but they were. I wouldn't say Bartes was a good goalkeeper. He just obviously Van der Sar was a different level to him, and you're quite right. I think in 2 or 3 years, you see Edison and Alisson, they've made plenty of errors with their feet that have cost goals and their bad positioning and stuff like that. But
they suddenly think they're outfield players and want to do drag backs and things like that. That's the problem. That's the problem. I'm 100% sure that Edison has not been a goalkeeper from day one. He was an average outfield player who's gone backwards.
Yeah,
in that sense.
Let's talk about then the reaction though to that goal, because obviously the first goal goes in, Paul, and it changes the dynamic of the game. It's perfectly set up for City to just stroll through the afternoon. They've got the ball in positions where they can create pockets of space, make the pitch very big, spread the play, have United chasing shadows, and that's basically what happened over the 90 minutes, really, apart from United coming back into it for that little spell.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the goal made it. People score goals that early. It makes a big difference. It totally kills the hours leading up to the game, especially a game of that magnitude as well. And what I was just sitting up there in the press pit and I'm watching it, and you know, I'm doing the radio, and a few times I'm virtually shouldn't have been. I should have been flicked my mic off, kind of shouting because I'm watching John Stones float into the box on his own, and must have done it 4 times, and only once did it get to him.
Yeah.
And lucky enough, I think there was a block coming. But if they'd have got the ball to him off of the near side, the first half, and the near side of the pitch, he would have been shooting at goal 1-on-1 with David De Gea. It was, and I think myself, how is he doing that? When someone does it once, you think, right, I've been embarrassed. I can't allow that to happen again. My teammates are having a go at me. He'd done it 4 times into that box on his own, and no one near him, no one taking responsibility, no one working hard. And then you're looking on the other side of it, and Bernardo Silva was causing Luke Shaw problems. Luke again gets emotional, wants to get physical to show how strong he is, forgets about helping his left side centre half, and there's big gaps in between him and Lindelof because he's not stepping in. All he wants to do is get close to Bernardo Silva and try and knock him out of his elbow and things like that. There was players running off all day long when the back four, Luke Shaw, Lindelof, Varane, Wan-Bissaka, see runners. If they can't shout someone in, they go and take responsibility to the nearest one to the goal and leave the furthest one out wide away from it. The chance of him scoring for there are very, more difficult. But there was no communication. Luke Shaw, poor defensively in the first half. He made 1 run forward in that first half. That tells you how poor Luke Shaw was. Never made an effort going forward. He made Wan-Bissaka look like Cafu. Wan-Bissaka was up and down that line, and that's why Jack Grealish was doing his petulance washerwoman act. Every time he was tackled, he wanted to berate the referee because he couldn't deal with him, because he didn't want to be running that way. And I don't know whether or not he was told by Ten Hag to do that, but he done a fantastic job, Wan-Bissaka, and it was ruined by a fellow pro, letting himself down and then affecting him in his head about him making challenges. So United first half were very, very poor. Fortunate to go in at 1-1 and given the opportunity to come out in the second half and have a go. But as we know, they come out in the second half and it was something very similar, I think, from a corner. And again, Gundogan is standing in and around the edge of the box on his own. Once bitten, twice shy comes to mind, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll talk about the goal from the kickoff. How does a midfield player get in that area with that much space around him and score a goal? But saying that's only someone like, say, i.e. a Brian Robson can answer that question, because Robbo did those kind of things all day long. He scored so many goals from that area, making his own space just by gambling and maybe hoping, believing that if there's anything, a second ball around, I'm going to get on it. Not that the fact I'm going to get on it and I'm going to be on my own and I'm going to have enough time to pull my leg back and hit it without anybody being close to me. So it was just ridiculous how, after staying in the game, getting back into the game, and then coming out second half again, everything being refreshed in their heads, got to do this, got to do that, and bang, straight away they're on the back foot, and should have been no response after that because City just dominated, and City were just poor, really, when it mattered at the end. They weren't clinical enough, taking their opportunities, poor decisions in the end, because you could see the frustration of a lot of City players having a go at their teammates because they were making the wrong decisions. So they had an off day, but their off day looked a damn sight better than United's one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that sort of reflects in what we saw in the final overall. It wasn't great. And yeah, not to bang this same drum again of saying, it's what we were resigned to. We weren't really, but it's the kind of game that you expected. If United didn't start great, and sometimes City do start fast, but United are renowned bad starters as well. I mean, we're not talking this team; I'm talking historically. But I still feel like come out of the ground, United. Like, it didn't take that long. It's like, I know a few people have been sort of like carrying the weight of it for a couple of days, but I'm not. It's disappointing to lose a cup final, but it's not like I don't feel despondent about it. I kind of expected it. I don't think the golfing class was massive. I come away thinking, I look at the players that we had available. City was still favourites to win that game, and they won it narrowly. I don't think that we did ourselves justice. I don't think that we played as well as we could have done. And you look at that game, still looking at the areas in which we can improve and saying, yep, those are the areas, those are the bridges that we need to get over to close the gap. In terms of quality, I mean, the thing that we have shown is that we can beat City on a one-on-one basis. And this is very much a case of going back to when Chelsea were taken over, and we could beat them on a one-on-one basis. And then even back in the 80s, you beat Liverpool, and it's like you can beat them, but you can't. It's about getting the points on the board in the other 38. 38 when it's a 42 game or 40 games, 36 games now. It's about getting the points on the board in those games, really. And Ten Hag's job, it's going to be difficult because we've talked about the qualities that are in this team, and they are qualities. I mean, look, in the last few weeks, Fernandes has been in good form. He's responded generally well. I think this is a podcast where we'll give criticism and praise in equal measure. I mean, the turnaround that we've given Shaw a couple of times on this podcast, where we've criticised him one season and praised him heavily. So we're happy to give that praise. But those two, I've just mentioned, they're two of those players, and there are others as well. Garnacho looks like he's probably one, although he looks a little bit more icy than the others. They do play emotionally. And the thing that Ten Hag's got to try and do is try and either balance that with more ice cold experience coming in, or just somehow get into their heads to make the right decisions at clinical moments. Because the thing that's stopping us isn't being as good as City. Or that can happen if United get 4 new players. City can still expect to play like they did on Saturday. They can still do the same kind of thing because they're still the best squad in Europe. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to match them in one transfer window, regardless of who the owners are, by the way. And we'll get to that in a little moment. But Ten Hag's job is to match this next part of the transition and make United more clinical so that, all right, on a one-on-one game, anything can happen. Make United better equipped for those one-on-one games. Fine, that's great. But in the meantime, make them better equipped to accumulate all the points in the 36 games against every other team, because you don't play Manchester City every single game. Sorry, I'm just muting Paul there for a moment. A little bit of noise going on. And I don't think it's Paul who's upset about the cup final. That might be the echoes of my phone call, my voicemails to Paul over the weekend. Even though I said that I took the defeat in good humour. No, but seriously speaking, with Ten Hag, his job, his responsibility over this next, the next year really, it'll be seen in the players that he buys and the players that he's recruiting, and you can kind of see it with the players that are identified so far. He has to make sure that the good qualities that are in this squad, and they are good qualities, even if we're critical of them in the bigger aspects of the individual moments on Saturday, like Sean and Fernandes. We're talking about the isolation of those moments, particularly Fernandes. He's played out right, for whatever reason. Ten Hag chose to play him out there. You are diluting his importance or his effectiveness to the side because you're not playing him in the area in which he can make the greater influence. Yes, all right, that's because of the situation that we had with the selection in other areas. What I'm trying to say is hopefully that the decisions that he makes in recruiting the right players and moving forward in the way that he manages the squad as well. Ten Hag's own decisions with selections are included in this. that those will improve to the point where we can accumulate more points over those 36 games. That's going to be the key difference for United next season. But, you know, all in all, yeah, all right, we can maybe say 1 or 2 changes. So we're not really being that critical of Ten Hag as well. Maybe he waited a little bit long in bringing Garnacho on. But Paul, we've talked about this 3 or 4 times over the last few weeks, but it was all kind of like ifs and buts. It was kind of like, if we do this, how do we rate what Ten Hag has done? You know, how do we rate his first season? But now we've seen this first season completed. How do you assess Ten Hag's accomplishment in his first season in the job?
Well, first of all, when I was walking in, so many fans were coming up to me and asking my opinion. Excuse me. And they were actually echoing what I was actually thinking by the fact that they're saying, you know, virtually, we just don't want United thrashed or embarrassed today because it would just ruin everything that's been done so far. And I agree with that, because it would have been terrible if that had happened, on the fact of, yes, it was City and something like that happening, but on the back of what United have achieved this season of winning the first trophy available, actually getting really what the club wanted, what Ten Hag wanted as well, was Champions League. And it could have been, all pushed aside, and it could have been an embarrassment given how City have been over the last few months. But they didn't get thrashed. They did get beaten, but they got to two cup finals, and they've finished in the top 4. And there's an opportunity to play in the Champions League next season. What I'm looking for is the club to be prepared for it, which you was alluding to earlier. The only way the club can be prepared for it, if the manager is allowed to go out and bring in some of the players that he wants to the football club. And I don't mean wait until July. It's too late by then. You've got, the work has got to start already on its way now, and then by June, and get those players in place. Those players then can maybe be on their holidays, knowing where they're going to start their new place of work, and move on from there. And players are starting the first day of pre-season with their designated clubs, and that's designated club, I should say. And that hasn't happened for a long, long time. It's still always if, buts and maybes. And any player who does turn up during the pre-season, you're not really sure if he was first, second, third, fourth, fifth choice. And does the manager really want him? That is the big problem. And that's something, if that's rectified, then United can bounce on. Not going to win a Champions League. Looking to do justice in the do themselves some justice in the Champions League. You're looking to try and start the season better than last time around. You're looking for them to establish themselves in the top position in the league, because I still think you just don't go and win a league straight away, given where City are at this moment in time. And then you look to still compete in the cup competitions available. And that's all you're looking for. But to do that, you have to go out and get a minimum, I'm going to say 3, but some might say 4, some might say 5, but you need a minimum of 3, 4, 5 players who are better than the ones already there. Squad players don't come into it. It's that first 11 that make the difference. They're the ones who have played the majority of the games. They're the ones who 100% play in every big game. Games that matter, the ones that are important, the ones that make you step on. And that's the only way it's going to work, Wayne, if they go out and get players who are better than what they got already.
Yeah. Patrick says, morning, gents. Having watched the cup final again a bit more objectively yesterday, I think Ten Hag has got big game management despite the thrashing this season. It's a difficult one to call because the away form's been so poor. But generally, obviously at home he's done a good job in those games. And yeah, it's difficult to tell on the cup final because of the options that we had up front. Obviously, Anthony was a big miss tactically because he does a lot of that work. And I'm not going to say Martial was a miss, but very disappointing to sort of see him injured, I guess. But that's brings up his United career. He's going to be a player who's moving on. He says, I guess I have more faith in Ten Hag than the ability of some of our players to execute his plan. I do think that's fair, but I also do want to say that, this time last year, all of us were very heavily critical of the players. There were probably more than one podcast on this channel where I was saying you wouldn't be surprised if any of them were moved on, really, by the time that United needed to transition into a winning side again that were going to win trophies. So... Yeah, and last commenting from Patrick. Well, I'm not, last on the timeline, not the last one. You're allowed to make more. Patrick says, aside from the goals, it was a difficult match for City. Hull and fairly quiet. I think that's a fair point as well. It's not like it was easy for City to get into their stride. It was just comfortable for them once they'd scored the goal. They had the game plan that was there, and United surrendering the goals in the way they did so quickly. So, I mean, yeah, we'll talk about just the summer briefly then, and that transfer activity. Casey says, I'm not even thinking about players who will buy until the Glazers do one. Now, the ownership is something that's obviously in the balance at the moment, and I think the thing is, like, I would say that either way, Ten Hag will get backed for the decisions that he wants to make. The ownership's going to affect the budget that he spends. Obviously, the qualifying for the Champions League affects it somewhat as well. So we're going to have some leeway, some leverage in the players we can buy and the amount of money we can spend. It will fluctuate quite wildly depending on the ownership. You would think that either way, Ten Hag will be backed. He'll be allowed to buy the players he wants to buy, unless you get someone who comes in and just wants to sort of put their own players in place, like the Chelsea owner. You would suspect that everything's stable enough that Ten Hag will have that sort of luxury to be able to do that. But for the good of him and for the good of the club, it really is a matter, isn't it, Paul? I mean, I don't really want to talk about this too much. I think it's just a common sense thing that the takeover should be concluded quickly now. They should move. All the places are there. All the pieces are in place to sort of say, we can conclude this and move forward. So everyone knows where they stand and they can move forward. And then Ten Hag should be allowed to make the decisions that he wants to make, right? I know it sounds like I'm giving you a pretty straightforward yes there, but just thought I'd get your thoughts on that.
It's called a leading question, Wayne.
Yeah.
yeah, I've been saying it for ages. As good as things have been, and now the season's come to a close. Now everything else should open up, and he should be allowed to get what he wants. And he needs that. He needs everything to be rectified. Surely everybody. And when we say everybody, I mean the people who want to buy the club. Surely they understand it. That if they look into they want it concluded quick, because they must understand how important it is to go and shop early. For the fact of more than anything, players are still kind of restless, still edgy. They've got things in their mind. They might want Manchester United, but if someone else comes there and they don't want to get caught waiting, because if they leave a club waiting, their bargaining power goes a little bit, or I should say the agent. The agent does all that, but he's the one thinking about his money as well. He's thinking the longer he leaves people, they're going to start taking bits away, because they're going, well, you're using us because you want to go there. So it all becomes a little bit of a game in the end, and surely these people in charge are going to want the better players coming to the club, if they get control. So somewhere along the line, someone has to get over the line and get this closed off as quick as possible to take the club forward. The most important thing for me is that when the club has got over this line, and then the people in charge are looking to then move on and give then get players in, hopefully they will allow the manager to get who he wants, not the CEO using a best friend as a sporting director or an agent to go out and pick the players that his mates in the pub are said to get.
Yeah.
In other words, a Woodward kind of scenario, and end up with a load of dead wood on stupid money who can sit around for ages and not really play. That's gone on for too long. I just want to see managers, or hear about managers getting what they want, the ones they want to work with, using their scouts, because they trust their scouts. Their scouts will tell them, talk to them about them as footballers, will talk to them more importantly as people, because it's about your personality. It's about how you conduct yourself around other people. Can you fit into a dressing room? Are you argumentative? Are you carrying issues that could affect a team's season? All those issues are found out good agents. Sorry, by good scouting systems, and that's why Sir Alex was more successful than most, because his brother was one of the lead people, and people underneath, they trusted him as a manager to look after him in their jobs, and he trusted them that they weren't going to they'll give him the best possible player who was as good off the pitch as he was on it.
Yeah.
And that always gives you a chance. At this moment in time, there's been so many bad apples which have turned up at Manchester United, and it tells you this way of allowing these people to come in because they're a friend of a friend to do a job. A club the stature of Manchester United should never. You paying a manager so much money, let him actually, if he's going to go down in flames, let him be the person who's actually, you know, the pilot on that plane. Let him be that one rather than someone else giving him someone because it works well on FIFA.
No, yeah, I completely agree with that. And that was the argument I made for Mourinho a while back, even when it looked like it was going badly. You can't give him a new contract and then not back him in the summer. And Ten Hag, the thing that you've got with Ten Hag is, first of all, a good track record at Ajax, but then you've got that sort of club structure of I can do it in a certain system. Can you do it when you move that system into a different football club, the size of Manchester United? And the thing is, the players that he's brought in have all shown the right temperament, and temperament's the key word, which is Anthony, Casemiro, Eriksen, and Martinez. They've all shown the right temperament to play at that level, which means he's got a good eye for what it takes to play at that level on that kind of stage for United. So the players that he's identifying, I mean, it's not. I don't think it serves us any purpose to go over the actual individuals. I mean, you took Mason Mount and Harry Kane are the two most heavily linked names, and until they're concluded, I think we'll let the speculation speak for itself. But at least you know that he's got an idea of what he wants and how that will fit into the system that he's building. That Mike says here, early deals are important this summer. News on Mount seemingly it appears transfer business is different. They're making an offer for Kane. If Levy is up to his usual brinkmanship, then move on. Absolutely, I think United are doing that, and I think they're more power to them for doing that as well. Because I mean, if they don't hang around with Spurs all summer, which will get them nowhere, they'll find out very early if Spurs are willing to sell or not. Then that will show a sign of how serious they are. But it is a case of, like you said earlier, Paul, getting the sort of future of the entire club settled as quickly as possible, and then from at the same time, because you can't afford for time to stand still, getting these players in and out sorted quickly as well. Because I mean, there's a lot of players there on the edge of that squad now, Paul. It's a big squad. It's kind of bloated with a lot of professionals who, for one reason or another, will surely be looking for somewhere else to play next season. I mean, Fred's been linked with a number of clubs, even though he's been a good squad option this season. McTominay is another one. Maguire is an obvious name. Martial as well. Obviously, depends on the list of takers, but I don't think those four players will have a complete absence of clubs who want to buy them. There was even a rumour that Maguire might be using as a make weight for the Mason Mount deal, which would definitely suit United. I don't know how much it would suit Chelsea, but
Let's put it this way. When that one come up, there was someone who I know is a big Chelsea fan. Straight away, he talked about giving his season ticket back. He's had his season ticket a long time. That just doesn't work. In my opinion, I just don't see that happening with Pochettino. He's not. No, I think that again, that's just been someone's just throwing that one in there as something because they know that Harry Maguire is not in Ten Hag's plan. It's an easy one to use. As far as I'm concerned, Harry Maguire doesn't play for a side that's chasing Champions League football, whose mindset is Champions League football and winning league titles. He doesn't play in those teams, Wayne, not at all.
It'd be good for those players though, because you've talked about a few stayed at the club for maybe a bit too long. And I'm not saying that with Maguire because I think he's been club captain, and even if he's been unpopular with supporters, the managers have generally kept him in their plans until this season. This is the first season where it's looked like, all right, it's time to move him on. I'm not talking about just Maguire in particular. I'm talking about all these major first team players that I've talked about just there. It will be in their credit if they make those decisions sooner as well, won't it? If they make the decisions.
We got to remember, Wayne, as well, that football's changed where, in a sense of players in this generation now are content to sit around and be a part of. Where before, the moment you weren't getting a look in, you'd be knocking on the door because you would have felt your ego taking a battering, being a bit part. You not even being around. You didn't want to be there. You'd be around and you'd be grimacing because you're just not enjoying your moment. But now, I don't think that's there anymore. Players now will be content to sit around that little bit longer and wait for it, especially if they're not going to get anywhere near the money. And just because of the way they are, the way their lifestyle is, it suits them. Not many of them, it's going to be difficult to get them to move on, especially now with agents, the way they work as well. It's going to be very, very difficult to get them out. It's not as easy as what people think it is. I mean, Chelsea have got God knows how many loanees coming back, so they've got big problems on top of the issues they cause themselves with these long-term contracts as well. Yeah. They've got big problems, so it's not that easy in this league. I call it the circus league because that's what it's going to be this summer. It is going to be a circus. What goes on in the Premier League? So can only hope. But a lot of it, Ten Hag, it's out of his hands because he can't. He knows who he wants to get rid of, and it's blatantly obvious who he wants to get rid of. But those players are sitting there on contracts, and they're looking to maybe where they're going to go next, and they're kind of going, "No, this is too good here. Why am I going to go there for?" And have to struggle and fight, and mix and have these, and have fans who are going to have a go at me when I play because of where I come from. Why should I have that issue?
Yeah, Casey says Chelsea have about 500 number 10s, so there's something should be interesting. Box says we couldn't get money from youth players, Alanga, Annabelle, Laird and Williams. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame for Laird because I thought he would have a good chance. Hannibal as well. I talked to a couple of Birmingham fans who have said that he's done quite well, but it's a big step from doing well for them then commanding a Premier League level. But it's definitely going to be an interesting summer anyway, and I don't think it does us any justice at this moment in time to comment over the speculation, but we will, I guess, at some point over the summer, Paul, we'll reconvene if there's like a major transfer or something major happens with the club to talk about it. Until then, enjoy your summer, guys. Heads up about the final. It's not that disappointing. It's disappointing not to win, but it's the back end of a very good season for United. Probably a bit further ahead than what anyone would expect. Paul would have been qualifying for the Champions League and getting to a cup final. Better than Paul is, winning a cup and being there as well and playing good football. I think we're in good hands where we are, and we're well placed to sort of continue that upwards trajectory, so long as the manager gets the backing that we all hope that he does. Until then, guys, if you've enjoyed the pod, please like and subscribe. And Harry and the guys will be later tonight talking about the game as well. And if you've enjoyed listening to us on the audio, give us a review on the platform you're listening. Take care, guys. Speak